Good afternoon, folks. I'm Eagle Spitz on Desert Island Vids over at Punk Homeless Eclectic Virtual Festival. Today, with me, I've got Poonham de Cruz, which is a great name, from Compass Children's Charity, and Sheila Royce from Compass Children's Charity. Hiya.
Hi.
Hi.
How's things?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good, thank you. All things considering, all good, thanks.
yeah, we've got a lot of things to consider, haven't we? So, are you both working or stuff at the moment? Because I know you work from. Do you work from home normally, Poonham?
I normally work 1 day a week from home, and then 4 days in the office. So working from home 5 days is it's a new experience, but it's the type of work I do. So I work for another charity, so it means that we're able to do agile working, and everything that we do actually can be done from home. So it's a busy time obviously at the moment with COVID-19, but working from home and thriving for the moment.
I work from home all the time, so it's actually not been a great leap for me. I've worked from home for nearly 20 years for my sins. I'm a freelance translator.
Okay, cool. Brilliant. So give us a little bit of background about Compass Children's Charity. Either of you.
No worries. Sheila, do you want to begin, and then I'll chip in with current day stuff?
Okay. Well, Compass Children's Charity has been going since about 1999, and it works predominantly with street children at risk in Central America, and more recently in Kenya. I've been involved almost since the start, and for a long time just as a supporter before I became a trustee. I think the thing that I like most about the charity is that I've got a background in human rights. I've volunteered for Amnesty for most of my life. But what I liked about Compass was that it was very practical. So we take care of children that are on the streets. We have street teams that go out, work with the children, try and educate them, trying to befriend them, trying to restore some of their trust in adults. Trying mostly to get them into our program so we can get them off living on the streets, because it's not a safe place to be. But as well as that, we have residences where they can come in and live. Obviously they get fed, they get a bed, they have a safe space. We try and provide them with an education, with something to do so that they something to do to earn a living for when they move on into independent living. But what I also like about Compass and the Casa Alianza programs that they work with is that they look at it holistically. So it's not just the child that's on the street, but we try and look at the reasons for why they're there. So we try and address this, obviously the situations of poverty and abuse. We work with the families. We have social work teams. It's just, we just cover the whole area, and it's very practical. Poonham, do you want to? I mean, I can give you some personal experiences, but maybe Poonham, if you want to chip in there.
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved with Compass Children's Charity for the best part of about 15 years, and that's in sort of various capacities. So that's as a volunteer overseas with Casa Alianza Guatemala, that's as a trustee, that's as an employee, and then sort of more recently as sort of chair of trustees. So I think 15 years, and sort of both Sheila's testament as well as being with the organisation from the start, I think that speaks volumes, just sort of this kind of drive and commitment that we have towards the organisation. And I think the fact that, for all the reasons Sheila's mentioned, but I think the fact that we're quite an agile organisation as well. So the fact that we're able to kind of respond to how the different situations that the children are finding themselves in, but also just how the world is changing phenomenally fast as well. And actually what we're finding, for example, at the moment is actually the number of children living on the streets is slowly starting to decline, but actually what we're finding is that they're then falling through the gaps into the more dangerous situations. So for example, we're seeing a real rise in commercial sexual exploitation of minors across Central America, and actually what it means for the Casa Alianza programs that we support is that actually they're adapting to that. So they're supporting those projects. So we've got projects in Honduras and in Guatemala, for example, that are dedicated safe houses that work alongside the national police, alongside police raids on establishments where sort of they're suspected of having minors working there. We've had programs in Honduras, for example, and in Mexico, working with internally displaced children and children who are sort of fleeing really dangerous situations in their home country and actually no longer are safe because they're persecuted by gangs or by the police, for example, and actually literally have nowhere to go but to flee their country and to seek asylum in other countries. So we're able to kind of adapt and work with the changing environment, and I think that's what makes it so special, that we're able to do it quite immediately. It's not something that we have to wait and push through as part of our strategy. It's something that we can respond to very quickly, which means that we can prioritize those children and make sure that we get them the assistance that they need straight away.
Right. I think the last figures I read, there was over 100 million street children in the world and 40 million in Central America. How do you choose which children you work with? I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Igor. And I think we're really careful and mindful with the use of figures, because we recognise that we've heard figures of 150 million, 200 million, 50 million. And I think the reality is that unfortunately no one knows really just how many children there are living on the streets. And the way we work with the children on the streets is the fact that it's actually based on trust. And without trust, you can't have anything. And the way the approach is that we have a number of outreach workers who daily visit the streets and go and frequent the places where children are often sleeping. So a lot of children you'll find are sleeping in the daytime rather than at night, because at night is when they have to be awake and be extra vigilant around sort of some of the dangers that they encounter, for example. So they've received a lot of discrimination and a lot of abuse by virtue of being on the streets. So what we find then in the daytime, they're easier to find because they're often asleep, and it means that outreach workers are able to go to different points in the city and work with as many children as possible. And now some of those children will want to work with us and actually others won't. And for the ones who don't want to, we absolutely leave our contact details, and we'll keep trying to engage them over a longer period of time, because we recognize that it's a journey, not a destination. And actually for some children, they've seen such horrors in their life that actually it's really hard to trust someone first time round. So actually that trust journey takes a long time. So it's really difficult to work with absolutely everyone, but we find that amongst the children on the streets that actually the name Casa Alianza, how it's known in Latin America, has such confidence and such faith that actually what we're finding is that children are finding us rather than us having to seek children out. And that's because we're trusted workers, we're an organisation that has incredibly high standards, and actually children understand that actually if they want to work with Compass and Casa Alianza, that it's actually a partnership. Then they put in something and we will put in that as well. And if it doesn't work out first time round, it doesn't matter, we'll try again. And I think that's the process that we often work with children as well.
Okay, I was trying to look for a corny link to your first song, Sue. Not Sue. Sheila. But obviously I can't. But would you like to introduce your first song, please?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the order I gave them to you. Yeah, I think it's Louis Armstrong. It's Louis Armstrong, isn't it? It's a wonderful, it's a wonderful world. Yeah, I just love the positivity of this song, and it just makes me feel good. I do play music myself, and on some of my piano playing gigs that I do finish with this one always, because I just think it's just such a lovely. It's just got such a lovely feel, and it's just a reminder, because with the things we work with are so gruesome at times, and the situation that the kids are in and the families are in with the poverty, we do just have to remind ourselves that it is a nice world. out there. There are predominantly good people in the world, and it's important to remember that. And also there's lots of really good people like yourselves that are doing things to help. So it's I just love the song, and I think if I was on a desert island, I just want to remember it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's one thing we need to remember. It is a wonderful world, and I mean, why would we want to rehabilitate people to a world, children to a world which wasn't wonderful?
Yeah,
You know?
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
So, you started 15 years ago. Have you grown much since then?
Oh wow, I hope so. I think I started work when I volunteered with Casa Alianza Guatemala. I think at that point in my time, I was just finishing university. I studied international development, and I think I was at that crossroad of not knowing what I would want to do next. And actually, that placement there really cemented for me, I think, some of the inequalities in the world, and actually the importance of working with children, the importance of second chances, and actually really kind of understanding that when we see sort of poverty, inequalities, when we see situations children find themselves in on television, it's so easy sometimes, I think, as we sit on our sofas and watching television, to judge what's happening. And actually, the reality is, when you sort of see it firsthand, you really understand the different nuances that are taking place in a child's life, and actually the difficult choices that they often have to make. And for many of the children, I mean, no one chooses to live on the streets. For all these children that we work with in Latin America, they're not orphans, they have parents. It's just that they've had to make the exceptionally difficult decision to leave home because of issues around family violence, around abuse, around neglect, around the fact that they've had to work on the streets and actually give up school. There's a lot of different reasons why that's led them to the streets. And actually, for some of those children, they don't want to be there. And the first thing that you will often find when I was doing a lot of street outreach work was that if you asked a child to draw kind of their future, the drawing was exactly the same. It was of this beautiful house. It was of a fence with their mum, their dad, their family, their dog. And it was actually that real sense of togetherness as well. And it just is such a stark reminder that actually, at the bottom line, actually all children want to do is to be loved, to have someone to believe in them, and to have those opportunities. And I think that's what Casa Alianza and Compass strives to do. It's that we just want to give children the tools so they are able to survive and thrive.
I guess my next question will be one of a more personal level. I'm a medically retired community psychiatric nurse, and one of the things I quickly learned that when you're working with somebody, it's a two-way relationship, and it affects and changes both of you.
Yeah.
And for me, it was always for the good. I mean, do you have the same experiences with children?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think there's so many of the cases of children who I've worked with that I think I've learned something from each and every one of them. I think there was one girl I can think of at the top of my head, and she was from Guatemala. She'd been sexually exploited in a bar, and she'd come to Guatemala originally from El Salvador. And she was kind of with us, and she was pregnant by one of the abusers. And I think one of the things that we learned through her sessions was just the situation she was in and the experiences she described could have broken anyone. And she was possibly the bravest person I'd ever known. And she was only 14. And she was carrying this child, and the unconditional love that she felt for her child that hadn't been born yet was just never failed to amaze me. And it was a love of a real fierce love that actually the situation and the world that she was going to bring her child into was going to be different. And actually the resilience of her, really, honestly, it just taught me so much about actually how it doesn't matter what situation we find ourselves in. sometimes with the right support and with loving people around us, we can try again and we can pick ourselves up as well, but it does take time. And she really did teach me the value of unconditional love, actually, which I was just, yeah, it really moved me when I was privileged to work with her.
That's awesome. That does something for you, does it? This thing. Would you like to chip in there, Sheila?
Yeah, I would. I think the experience that really stuck with me more was actually one of the ladies that we went to visit. I think for a long time I didn't go out to the programs because I didn't think that I could cope with seeing the children on the streets. I think it's not, it's not something it's not something that, it scared me. I thought, can I cope with it? Because I'm quite emotional, I'm quite soft, and I wasn't sure I could cope. So when I finally plucked up the courage to do it, I was quite surprised to find that actually seeing the children on the streets and seeing how they were and seeing how they reacted with the Casa Alianza staff and the way they were so resilient and their courage and it wasn't a hopeless situation. I think that's what got through to me most, was it wasn't hopeless, because with all of the children, you could see that if they could just rebuild their trust and could just find their way into the programs, there was a way out for them. It wasn't hopeless. But what really, so that was great. What I didn't expect to find was one of the days when I went out with the social work team, we went out to one of the families. There was a lad in the programs, about 15, and he came in and out of the programs all the time. He'd come for a few weeks and then go back to he had a home. I call it a home. It was a corrugated metal, no bigger than a garage really. And all it had was one big mattress. We went in and you could see the fleas jumping off the mattress. It was just awful. There were 11 of them sleeping in there. There was the mother, the father, and the children all sleeping on this one mattress. The father was abusing the mother, and this was why the boy kept coming back, because he was actually trying to protect his mother. So although he could go to the Casa Alianza programs and have a much nicer life and get his education, he still wanted to go back and protect his mother. And I can remember sitting on this mattress with this woman holding my hand and just being so grateful that we were there to help her. And I actually felt for a while that was the hopeless situation, because I couldn't see how she got out of it. I could see how the kids could progress, but I was really worried for her. And I must admit, this was probably about 15 years ago now, more, and I can still see that woman's face and her husband's face, and I think of them so often. And it was quite a surprise to me to find that was what upset me more than the children, because I could see hope for the children, but I was really worried about this woman. And I think that's what I like, because about Compass, we're coming back to what I said earlier, is that we work with the whole thing. So she will have been getting support, that the social work team were aware of her, and they will be going in, and I'm sure they would get her out to a safe place if they really felt they needed to. So it looks at the whole picture. So that's probably my abiding memory of my trips over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think just another experience that I had as well, I think was just around about Christmas time. And I think sometimes, and I think we're probably guilty of it doing it in the UK as well, that sometimes we forget that some of the children we work with have had such difficult experiences as well, and then they've become almost adults in the way they've tried to cope and deal with it, and sort of develop that sort of hard armor to try and cope on a day-to-day basis. But actually just how important it is to kind of recapture your childhood as well. So I think on Christmas, one Christmas we spent on the streets in Guatemala, and it was in the evening, Christmas Eve, and we were working with a group of children who were committed to working with the outreach workers but weren't ready to make that transition into the home. And we were singing Christmas carols on the streets, and it was just a real stark reminder that actually Christmas was really important to them, and actually they still absolutely were talking about Santa Claus visiting them on the streets, and they were talking about the little presents that they'd done as a secret Santa, and it was just actually some things that they'd sort of managed to find on the streets that they managed to pull together and were going to give to each other that day. And actually it really reminded me that no matter how hardened some people think these children have become, that actually they are just children, and all they need is just a little bit of love and help them see this through and to kind of survive and thrive.
Excellent. So, your next song, Sheila?
My next song, Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. I just think from the opening bars of it, it just conjures up so many memories, and it just, you know, I could be feeling so low or whatever, and that comes on, and everything just lifts, and you just end up dancing around the kitchen to it. And in the actual video, in the official video, he introduces the song by saying, "Nobody wins unless everybody wins." And I just, that's such a great sentiment, you know, in this horribly unequal world of ours. I mean, that's a great sentiment to have, you know, nobody wins unless everybody wins, because but when you look at the video and you look at the camera fanning out over the crowd, and everybody's just jumping as one, and everybody's united, and it's such a joyful scene, and you look at the musicians on stage and they're just having a whale of a time as well, and it's just sheer joy. I couldn't live without this song.
Excellent. So, COVID-19 and street children, that's a hell of a mix, isn't it?
Well, yeah, clearly it's very difficult to maintain social distancing on the street. It's very dangerous. They haven't got a safe place to go to. It's all very well saying stay at home if you haven't got one or haven't got a safe one to go to. So it's, if we think of the problems that we're having here, you try living on the street, and it's doubly difficult. I mean, over here we managed to, what was it, in London, they got rid of the homeless people off the streets overnight by giving them accommodation. All of a sudden they could do it, things that they said they couldn't do for years, they managed to do it overnight.
Well,
because
my wife Rachel works with homeless in Nottingham, and they're all in hotels. You know, it's like the government can find money when it threatens them, I think.
Exactly. It threatened everybody, it threatened wealthier people, so they instantly could do something about it. Obviously that's more difficult in the countries that we work in. There probably aren't these places for them to go to, there aren't the resources, so it's very much more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, if you think about some of the World Health Organization guidance is around, the best way to stop the spread of the virus is by washing your hands. And it's that automatic assumption that actually globally everyone has access to clean, safe water and soap. And actually the children that, you know, we work with on the streets, you know, have some of them haven't had a bath in the last month. So actually it's really difficult. And I think what we're also seeing as well is the hidden impact of COVID-19 as well. So we're seeing the same thing in the UK, and I think globally as well, is that the increase of violence in the home and abuse in the home as well. And so and children and women being disproportionately affected by that as well, because actually you're being told to stay at home, and actually for children at risk, that's a really difficult decision, whether it's, and is that decision in Latin America of actually do you stay at home with in an abusive situation, or actually do you leave and seek solace on the streets? And actually that solace is a real inverted commas solace, because actually it's a really difficult decision, and actually there's no neither decision will be safe and neither decision will be good for your well-being, but actually it's a really difficult choice, and it's an impossible choice really.
No, I mean, I was thinking as well that a lot of street children depend upon the street to live. You know, so I mean that lack of human contact is going to be disastrous, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot of them are sort of, for example, when they're on the streets, that they're sort of begging for survival, and again the lack of people on the streets, which effectively means less money for them to be able to spend on food. A lot of them are trying to engage in any kind of informal work, so whether that's at traffic lights, you might see them juggling, for example. They might be offering to sort of clean your windscreen, for example, things like that. Anything to earn a small amount of money to maybe pay for a very small meal for that day. It means then a lot more actually just simply going hungry now as well. And actually we're in a really precarious situation where a lot of countries are coming out and saying that actually if COVID-19 doesn't kill a population, actually hunger will, because people are starving at the moment. And actually the devastating impact it's having is that actually economies are grinding to a halt, and actually people who do not have access to any kind of welfare support simply have just been abandoned and are left to just fend for themselves, and actually that puts them in an impossible situation.
Okay, so your last song, Sheila?
Yeah, my last song is another, it's uplifting one, really. Literally in the title, it's Lifted by the Lighthouse Family. Not a band I know that well, actually, but I love that song. Another one that just instantly makes me feel uplifted. And on a personal level, I had 2 quite major operations a couple of years ago, and my iPod and my music kept me going, and this was one sort of like at night when you couldn't sleep or whatever, and I was like, it was one that it's just so soothing, so calm. His voice, the singer's voice, I don't even know the man's name, that's terrible. It's just so instantly soothing and uplifting, and I just loved it, and I just used to listen to it so often. That and Thunder Road from Bruce Springsteen, but I'd already got one from him, so I had to have something different. So I just love the warmth. It just sort of embraces you. It just gives you a warm cuddle and makes you feel good. So that's why I chose that one.
Nice.
So viewers, all those tracks will be in our links when this is posted up. So check it out because of copyright restrictions. So have you got anything you'd like to say which we've not touched on, both of you?
Ooh.
I think for us, for Compass, we currently have a COVID-19 appeal at the moment. So if you can, please visit our website, which is www.compasschildrenscharity.org.uk. At the moment, what we're finding is all our sites in Latin America, they've got where children are unable to go to school. We're actually then having to resort to things like homeschooling. Over 100 children in our site in Honduras, for example. We're having to make sure that there are medical staff on standby 24 hours. We're having to purchase testing kits because actually these aren't freely available. We're making sure that obviously children who would ordinarily get their meals at lunchtime at school and at college, we're having to make sure that we're actually providing that in the homes as well. So at the moment, we're facing a huge amount of unexpected costs. So if anyone is able to help and support with that, we'd be really grateful.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody that supports us and has supported us, because without you, we really wouldn't be able to do what we do. So thank you.
Right, thank you both for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Likewise.
And
yeah, likewise.
Compass Children's Charity. These links are shared everywhere on their events pages and stuff, so drop some money in if you can. Thank you very much. Right, thanks guys.
Thanks very much.
Bye.